Hello boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, we have episode number 20 for you today. 20 is a pretty significant mark for us and hope you enjoyed the episode so far. Our guest today is Barry Oglesby, who is one of Irish jiu-jitsu pioneers. He's a black belt under Robert Drysdale and one of the organizers of the Irish Open. But before the Irish Open became what it is now, so last year's tournament drew some 1,300 competitors, there were a lot more smaller tournaments starting around 2011 that Barry and his partners organized. And in this episode, he talks to us about the origins of all those tournaments, the hurdles, the learnings, the ideas that got him started, the details of what goes inside a tournament organization, and also the financial aspects of running tournaments. This episode has a bit of an Irish undertone, of course, because we're talking about a local scene, but again, there are some universal lessons that could be applied in other circumstances and geographies. We also speak a little bit about BJJ, which again will be quite interesting to a lot of people. As always, we hope you enjoy this episode, and if you do, please help us out by subscribing to our YouTube channel, following us on Spotify, and giving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. You can also give us a follow on Instagram at alljiu-jitsu. We're ready to go. Barry, cool. Thanks a million. Thanks a lot for joining All Jiu-Jitsu Podcast.
My pleasure. Believe me when I tell you that there is very little else to do. So it's a double pleasure. It's a pleasure for both of us.
Yeah, so it's I'm definitely using the opportunity to have these chats, because once we hit the ground running again, hopefully, then there won't be much spare time left to arrange these things. So again, much appreciated. Along with Liam, you two guys are, if we had some form of a formal organization in Ireland when it comes to jiu-jitsu, we don't have it, but if we did, if in somebody's head it exists, you would be the faces of it, kind of de facto kind of leaders of Irish jiu-jitsu from that perspective. So you've been organizing the tournaments since I've been part of the jiu-jitsu community. I think I won my first medals at Grappapalooza. So let's get started with that. All the way back to Grappapalooza. Was that the first tournament that you have organized in Ireland, or was it something before?
It was the first one outside of my gym. So initially what happened was I had a pretty big academy at the time, which was in a big warehouse. We had a big matted space, reasonably big matted space, and a lot of kind of space where the strength and conditioning areas, where there hadn't been a lot of tournaments on. There were tournaments. There were still tournaments. There was the Irish Open, was running with John Kavanagh and Andy Ryan, and Andy was organising a thing called the Dublin Open at the time, and Liam had the Premier. But there hadn't been like kind of a local style one in Dublin for quite a number of years. There used to be a thing called the National Submission Championships, which was run by a guy called Colin O'Reilly in UCD, and he kind of drifted away from jiu-jitsu, and the tournament itself kind of died with him. Not died with him. Do you hear me? That's a terrible thing to say. It died along with his interest, I suppose you'd say. Oh, sorry, someone just handed me a cup of coffee, which is great. So there's at that stage there was kind of a bit of a gap, and I said, hey, look, I'll put one on. Talked to a few coaches, said, look, I'm going to put this thing on. We'll do it small. I thought maybe 70, 80 people would turn up, and about 130 people turned up. And I was not overwhelmed, but I was very surprised at the demand at the time, because you have to remember that this was probably 2010, 2011, and jiu-jitsu was in a very different place then. It was in Ireland, certainly, it was very much kind of an addendum to MMA. So most jiu-jitsu gyms were actually MMA gyms that had a jiu-jitsu program. Whereas now, I suppose if you see a mixed MMA and jiu-jitsu gym, it's more likely to be a jiu-jitsu gym that has a small MMA class attached to it. It was very much the reverse back then. And that was the case with me as well. Most of what we did was MMA and Thai boxing, and our jiu-jitsu program wasn't quite an afterthought. It was very big, like a big part of what we did, but it was probably like 30% of what we did, as opposed to now where it's 100%. And a lot of people showed up, and then I did a couple of those. I think I did 3 of those, and then that place closed down. And suddenly online then, but around the same time, there was on the old boards.ie forums, someone was asking, who's the best? Notorious there, yeah. I was pretty notorious back then as well, so on those. So there was people were having this debate of who's the best grappler in Ireland, who's the best Irish grappler, and I chimed in a bit. And then I said, hey, look, I'll run a tournament, and I'll give €1,000 prize to the first guy the top prize, for the winner. And I made this bold claim, and then I sat down and went, shit, I'm gonna have to actually do this. And I couldn't figure out how. So I couldn't figure out how to fund it. So I asked for sponsors, and to Tammy, to be fair, gave some money at the time. But it wasn't like a lot. And I was thinking, who's gonna actually buy a ticket to go to this event? And it wasn't like the way Polaris is now, or Fight to Win, or any of those. It wasn't really a pro grappling event to speak of back then. So I couldn't square the circle at all. So I said, I know what I'll do. I'll run an event during the daytime on the Saturday afternoon. I'll put some qualifiers on to maybe, so most of the guys were invitees, but maybe I'll put some qualifying division on where the top guys can qualify and go into the evening tournament. And I'll just, about 6 p.m. when the tournament's over, I'll rearrange the mats and we'll have the finals. And same thing again, the entry to the actual event, like it was the Grapplepalooza, the pro event was popular in that everybody was talking about it online, but nobody bought a ticket. And then but the event earlier was really popular. A lot of people responded to it really well. And I suppose I'd just come back from the Euros in 2011, which was my first time going to an IBJJF major. And I saw what they had done, and I kind of was looking at it for the first time ever from like a promoter perspective, going to a tournament and actually saying, gee, I wonder if I could do this. And up to that point, I suppose anytime you go to a tournament, you're just going for when you compete and then you go home. And that was the first time I sat back and went, well, okay, the scale is big, but this is very recreatable in a smaller event. So that's how Grapplepalooza, the first one, came about. And I suppose it's relatively famous. Chris Bowe won the prize at the time, beat Darragh O'Connell in the final. And I was helped enormously by the fact I think that Chris had just come home back to Ireland, and everybody was kind of curious about him because he'd been training with Braulio. And Darragh, I think, if I'm not too mistaken, had just done the Kumite with Lloyd Irvin around the time. So I was helped by that. But like I say, it was very popular online. I lost my shirt on the whole thing, by the way. I was paying it off for months afterwards. But it was a lot of fun to do, and it did give me ideas for the future.
That's brilliant, and I like that reference back to the boards.ie. And I have never participated, and I'm not even registered. And I think I started like around 2012, 2013, and but now I think maybe a few months ago I went on to read the threads. It's pure entertainment. It's great, great fun just reading back those posts. It's so if anybody hasn't been part of it, especially for the new guys, go just have a read just for the crack. They're quite entertaining.
Yeah, I'm sure that thread that gave me the idea is still out there. So it has to be. I think it was like, who is Ireland's best grappler?
Yeah.
Have a hunt there. Yeah, it's great entertainment. It's great to read through, and it's funny to see the names, because all the names that came up at the time were like it was John Kavanagh, Andy Ryan. And I remember Andy Ryan getting in touch with me at the time, and he going, hey, if I'm like, he was like 38, 39, he was like, what the heck? It was like, you're telling me that there's nobody else up and coming basically other than me, like. But it was a fun time as well, because I think things were definitely less formal. You knew almost everybody, so anybody I was getting in touch with to try to get to compete that day, even the coaches, like I knew personally. So it was just like a case of literally send them a text going, hey, do you want to compete? And you couldn't do that now. Like, I mean, there would be a lot more. I wouldn't know, for a start, I wouldn't know half of the competitors now personally, But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And so the other question I have is then, so that first event that you've put on, so you said you got some inspiration of the Euros for the larger event, kind of for the public event, let's say. But the first events that you're putting together, did you have any kind of reference point, or were you just going off the kind of your own logic? Okay, this would work, this makes sense, or did you use any, as I said, reference elsewhere?
I think like my initial thoughts, I mean, in terms of planning, like I'm kind of like I'm one of those sleepless night guys. I have to have like a notepad beside my bed if I'm going to sleep in and around an event, because constantly ideas and things that I have to do pop into my head, and it means I wouldn't sleep for 3 to 4 weeks in advance of an event, and that's not an exaggeration. I have to actually train myself to continue to sleep to try to do when I'm doing events or when I'm doing anything like this. So I had run MMA shows, so I had a good grasp of I suppose, in terms of the logistics of going into something and putting an event on. But in terms of bringing in like hundreds of competitors as opposed to bringing in, say, just 24 to make an MMA card, I really didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to market it. I didn't know how to make it an interesting event for people to come to. I had no idea what level of interest was going to come up. Like, I didn't know if I was going to be stuck like sitting in a sports hall with, you know, the mats all laid out and the medals all purchased and the sound system and everything ready to go, and, you know, 20 people showing up. So I knew that what I first had to do was get an online system, and at the time they weren't very popular. There wasn't a lot of them, and I wanted prepayment, and that was very unusual already, because most tournaments back then, you came in the morning, you queued up, you paid your cash, and you waited for your event, and that's your division to come up. And that would have been the way I'd always competed when I competed in taekwondo, when I competed in kickboxing. That you came up at 8:30 in the morning, weighed in, paid your money, and then sat around. You might fight at 8:30 that night. You might fight 12 hours later with no notification of when you were going to do it. You couldn't go off and get food or anything like that. So I wanted to do it like as I said, like the Europeans, like a major event, but I knew it was going to be smaller. But I wanted to kind of match that tournament experience. And the reason was for two reasons. One was because I knew that if other people were doing this at this level, then it must be the best way to do it, right? So there's no point in trying to reinvent the wheel. And then the second reason was, I thought to myself, well, look, if we're making a sport, or if we're, and I suppose in my mind, you couldn't tell how large jiu-jitsu was going to get here in Ireland. Like, there was no sense of at that stage that it was going to grow into what it has today. But in my mind was, if I put this on right now, it will make it easier for the future. Because at the end of the day, building a good culture of how people compete, the way they should present themselves to the weigh-in area, registering online in advance, having your brackets released a couple of days before, all of that didn't exist at that time. So it was a case of, look, if I'm going to do this, I want to lay down a good early marker for myself and make sure that, it's going to be properly organized into the future. So that was really where I was coming from, like, from that perspective. And then, like, after that, it was just a case of trying to attract people to it. And luckily, there hadn't been a tournament in a long time, and the interest in the professional event generated a lot of interest for the rest of the tournament too.
And at what point, so tournament number X, what's that X where you thought, okay, that foundation that you've put in could turn into something long term, and I could be doing this for years to come?
I've never really thought that way, honestly. And it sounds like this sounds like some of the people. It's kind of almost a platitude. Like, it's almost something that you'd think I was saying off the bat, but I really do just go from event to event. And at the time, certainly, like, I didn't think to myself, in 5 years' time, Grapplapalooza could be, there could be 1,000 people here or 10,000 people here or whatever it is. Or I'll be going over a whole weekend. And I certainly didn't envision that for the way, like, for example, the way the last Irish Open was, which was over the whole weekend as well, for the first time. For me, it was just about I kind of picked the battles that are in front of me. I didn't have an idea of how I could grow. I knew I could grow it somewhat. I knew that, there's an element here of, there's an interest here, I should say, rather than an element. Like, there's an interest here in what I'm doing. And I knew that if I continue to put on, like I suppose, like any good event or any good interest, if I continue to put on good quality events, well, then if I add 10 participants at every time, then one day I might make a profit, because the first one made a massive loss, and then the second one made a little profit. So after that, the second event, I probably said, well, maybe if I just keep adding 10 more people every time, then potentially I could this could form a part of my living, But honestly, I wasn't particularly motivated by the money at the start, and it was just kind of a fun thing to do, which sounds crazy because, like I said, probably heading into a recession right now. I believe we're in a recession right now, but at the time, this was the global 2010 recession, this was the profit markets and all that, and everybody was hurting from that. So around that time, the old saying, you don't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. Well, all I had was a window to throw it out of. I didn't have a pot to piss in. And at that stage, the mortgage company were calling quite a bit to ask me about that window. So it was a dangerous time to start putting on events, and a dangerous time to start throwing your money at things. So I really didn't do it with the idea that, hey, this is going to make me money and this is going to be my income. I did it because I kind of wanted to. I liked the challenge of it, and that's kind of what. That's kind of still what I do, I suppose, as well. Like, I mean, obviously it's taken on other, other kind of aspects now, but like, I still do it because I love it, as opposed to like, this is good for my bottom line,
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Again, it has to come from the right why, right? You know what I mean? If you start off just by being financially motivated, you probably are risking to lose that initial kind of spark and make wrong decisions that will eventually cost you financially. But if you have that origin, that initial spark in you all the time, I think, do you know what I mean? You might suffer a temporary loss on something, but then I think your customers will eventually appreciate it and will continue supporting you to that extent. So this is the question I've asked a few people when it comes to event organization, whether it's a tournament, a pro event, or a camp. Do you think it is possible to break even or to make a profit out of the first event in any kind of setting like this? Or is it all pretty much you have to expect that you're probably going to suffer a loss and then try to make it up?
I think it's one of those things, is plan for the worst, but expect the best. I mean, from my experience, like when I've tried something new, I've never been taken by surprise by how much money it's made. Like, even when you talk about the MMA shows I used to run, oddly enough, actually the first MMA show I ran made a profit, and I went, "Oh my God, I can't believe it!" And the subsequent two made a loss. So it was, I was taken by surprise. I think you're better off, running into those problems in the first event rather than getting this, certainly from my experience, rather than thinking or assuming that you're going to, max out and get a good return off your first one. I think a lot of the stuff as well, when it comes down to it, is, especially if you're talking about a new event or something new, you're looking at a situation where you have to sort of develop a sense of trust with the people that you're dealing with. So at the moment, as you were saying, myself and Liam, I suppose we're in a de facto situation of running the Irish Open, and having run the Premier. Liam has run the Premier down in Cork. I'm from Grapplapalooza, the Dublin International now as well. We've helped with the IBJJ. That if people see us attached to it in an Irish perspective, that they're, I guess they expect a certain level of quality, and they can hope for a certain level of quality. But when we were starting out, and I know for a fact this is the same with Liam as well, you kind of say to yourself, well, look, you have to kind of convince people to come along on that ride with you a little bit, and talk to them after the event as well about what went wrong and what you feel you can improve upon next time. Sort of develop that trust. And certainly from a local perspective, as we're talking, we're not like a major international company. We're not going from country to country and trying to put events on. From a local perspective, that trust is huge, because you're dealing with the same people, you see the same faces all the time, and you want to deliver for them anyway. You want to deliver a good event anyway, as standard. But listening to them and understanding what their needs are and what they're talking about is really important too. But yeah, I think almost like I say, making a loss in the first one was almost a good thing. I didn't think it was a good thing at the time, but it kind of helps you take a step back and go, okay, well, look, what went right and what went wrong. And usually those things leap off the sheet, right? They leap off the page at you very quickly about what went wrong. So it was a good opportunity for learning, I suppose,
Yeah, and a lot of the times I think when you get something off the ground and it turns a profit right away, I think it might just your ego might just get elevated a little bit too much as well, and you say, hey, I'm brilliant at this, whereas the fact you might have just been a bit lucky as well, that the circumstances, the timing, etc. So it may not have, you may have made right decisions, but they may not have been conscious. You may just been a bit lucky, and then you just say, oh, I'm great at this, and I can take more risks now because I'm really good at this, and it's always going to work. And now you're taking more risk, and it hits you on the next one, and you don't even know why.
If you think of what we're doing now, like we're heading into what they're calling a once in a lifetime recession, and of course this is my third once in a lifetime recession. So they've got the math somewhere wrong. But I think if you started a gym or you started a business right now, I think when the good times come, you're going to be in a great position. But if you started maybe last year and expect the same kind of level of business and level of income, I think around now you're going to be you're in for a bit of trouble, maybe, And I guess it's the same thing back then when I started out running those events. It was like almost, if I was more successful at the start, I might not have learned so many lessons. Some painful lessons too, I can tell you, but a lot.
Yeah, well, I'll ask you about those as well. But when it comes to the components for a successful event, okay, so on a basic level, what needs to happen for an event to be successful financially, and from a perception perspective? So what are some of, let's say, three main components? What needs to happen? Enough, whether it's I'll let you go.
I think first and foremost, you need to be putting on like quality in terms of the sport. So forget about the trimmings, forget about the medals, forget about the banners, the great online presence, the Instagram, anything like that. If people can't trust in the fairness, the honesty, that they're going to get a fair roll of the dice and a fair shake of the dice, that your officials are going to be really good, that your level of organization is going to be really good. If people can't trust in that, they're not coming back next time. I don't care how prestigious it is, how cool the trophy is, how much they're going to get mentioned online, anything like that. If people can't trust in the core values of what you're doing, then already you're on a loser. And I think you've seen that down, whether it's international events or local events here, you've seen that down the years, that there are events that are initially quite popular, and people love them for whatever reason they love them for. Whether it's that they get loads of matches, or that they get a cool sword, or whatever it is that they're getting on the podium. But quickly that interest dwindles over time. And the reason for that is they can't trust in kind of I suppose what you would call, not to use this word loosely, but the kind of the sanctity of the event, you know what I mean? So the fairness and the core of the event is that you're getting this opportunity to compete in a fair and kind of evenly applied rule set as well. That's the core of anything that you want to start to do. Make sure that you're applying the rules of the sport first, and make sure that you're doing that in an honest and fair way. I'll give you an example of that. Like, so even if your rules are whatever rule book you're going to use, it doesn't matter as long as they're evenly applied, right? But especially at a local level, where if you're walking out to the weigh-in area and suddenly you're calling guys that forward first, or you're going to let somebody weigh about 100 grams because they compete with you all the time. All these things have to go out the window. You need to be 100% by the book, so that the stranger walking in the door, coming in from the UK first time, over in Ireland, or wherever it is you're putting the event on, he has to get this as the same treatment and the same level of fairness as your buddy from down the road and his students. So you're going to disqualify them the same as you're going to disqualify him, or vice versa. And I'd say that's the first and foremost thing. And I think that's sometimes what people forget, that it's not about, it's about the sport, and it has to be about the sport. It has to be about the martial art itself, and how you apply the rules of that martial art. And and I mean, I've been criticized, I suppose, down the years, and I get a bit of banter off people all the time for being quite a stickler. Like, so as somebody who will go, sorry, it's not in the rules, and you upset a few people along the way, but I think ultimately most people respect you for it in the end. So even though some people might call you names when you're I don't know, disqualifying them or telling them to, tell them what it is, most people actually go, well, look, it's the same for him as it is for me, and to evenly apply those rules as well. In terms of financially, I've been, again, like, if people are talking about going into events to make money, I've got some bad news for them. Like, there isn't a huge amount of money in events if you're going to do them the way that I explained. So it's not. This is like not the idea. I think, I suppose, when people see like large scale events in particular, once you begin to start bringing in really good referees, you start importing medals, like high quality, like custom medals, and you start renting venues and doing everything properly in terms of the medical care, obviously the bottom line starts to dwindle. And that's like just a fact of life. It's the same with everything, right? So whether you're a coffee shop owner or you're an events organizer, if you increase your overheads, naturally enough, what has to reduce is your bottom line. But what I would say is that, again, that kind of expense and pumping that money in terms of officials and in terms of just the nitty gritty, I suppose, that you don't really realize, in terms of the quality of the mats that you're using, all of those things, they eventually translate into more trust down the line. And as a result, then when you run your second, your third, your fourth, your fifth event, that sense of trust that the people have in you, that they're going to get that same treatment, that they're going to get that same sort of quality of event out, that kind of increases. And again, that's a massive. I suppose what I would say is that it's an input that you have to, like a financial input that you have to take a bit of pain for initially, but that ultimately goes well for you in the end. And thirdly, I suppose is one thing, but the one thing that I think we haven't done as well as we might do in the last number of years is a lot of people come to events, and they don't come to win, because they don't have expectation that they're going to win, but they come to enjoy themselves. And they come to enjoy watching their teammates and have a go themselves. So you look at the growth of Masters Jiu-Jitsu, for example, it's huge. So to have that kind of event there for them, to make sure that they have like an enjoyable time while they're there, that it's in a good venue, it's not crowded out. They've got stands they can go to, pick up merchandise, good podium, all of the kind of ancillaries. They really help for the casual guy who's going along just to enjoy himself, get out there, have a roll, make sure his photo gets nicely taken on the podium. And because for a lot of people, it's a great day out. It's not just an event. They're not there to be the Irish Open champion. They're there to have a day out, get some photos, bring the family. I mean, who knows if they'll get to bring the family in the near future because of social distancing and all that. But you see a lot of people there, and they're there with their wives. They got their kids there, and they're cheering on dad. And dad might go out in the semi-final, he might go out in the first round, but the important thing to him is that he's out there competing. And that's to make it an event like that, to make it somewhere that you can go as kind of a like I said, not so much a family event, but I think, sure, you know what I mean, that it's an enjoyable experience to go to.
Yeah, and I found myself even kind of trying to reflect on a number of events over the last couple of years that I attended as a competitor, as a coach. Sometimes, when I have a lot of guys competing, I don't compete myself. I just go to support and I see their families around, etc. And if that feeling wasn't there, that I'm actually enjoying the presence there, and it's just all too crowded, the whole kind of logistics within the place is just not somewhere you want to be for the entire day. I find that whether it's half consciously or not, when that event comes around next time, I'll be less pushing, when it comes to trying to promote it, even internally within my team. It's like, yeah, all right, it's a good, if you're competing, yeah, let's go get the matches done. But other than that, I wouldn't be too...
It doesn't feel like... initially, the term Grapplepalooza actually came from my friend Paul Fox. Do you know Foxy at all? He runs Royal Grappling Academy. So his idea initially was, he was talking to me on the mat one day, and he was like, "Oh, wouldn't it be cool to do like a grappling festival where you had like clubs?" And I thought, like Lollapalooza, and that kind of merged with grappling and then became Grapplepalooza. And I remember going, that's what I'll kind of do. Like, it'll be like a festival of grappling. You know, you can come in, it'd be a nice place to go. The first one, actually, the first Grapplapalooza, we had DJ, like reggae music and all playing throughout the day, and it was great like that. But maybe I'll do that again. Maybe I'll just giving myself an idea.
That's what I wanted to ask, and I was always wondering to myself. I've seen a couple of events like this. I think in the UK they had I can't remember what it was called, the event, where they have all the music and arcade games and stuff like this.
Right. Was it Cleos? No.
Cleos grappling. That's it.
Cleos. Yeah,
it's a lot of fun.
They had the best trophy ever. They had the hammer.
Yes.
Yeah,
like a Mjolnir type of thing. So what I'm wondering is how. I presume there are some obstacles to doing this on a large scale. Like, you can't just make it too much fun if you want within a big venue where you have like 800-900 competitors.
Yeah.
Is that right assumption on my part?
Yeah, I mean, when you start to come into, I think we had, over the course of the 2 days, I think we had something like 1,300 competitors last year, right? So when you start to get to that number, now you have to start thinking about what makes people happy. Well, it's no longer DJs and reggae music. Now it's just about, can I go from this side of the mat to the other side of the mat without tripping over people and having to shove my way through a crowd? So it becomes literally an exercise in moving people around the building. And that sounds really dry and really like boring and dull. But as an example, I think 3 years ago was our first time in the indoor arena in Blanche. It was brand new. I think this was like the second event they'd ever had in it. What we organized the 8 mats, and we fenced in the whole 8 mats, and we said, hey, people can coach from up on this balcony up here. But actually, a lot of people were upset. A lot of coaches were saying, we can't, we're 20 meters away from our athletes all the time. And, you know, it kind of upset a lot of people. And at the end of the day, you're not here for the competitors, right? And you're not here for the referees. You're here for the competitors. You hear me? You're not here for the spectators, and you're not here for the referees. You're not here for the people who are running it. You're here for the coaches and athletes. So a year after, we just made a narrow, I was like, oh, that's really narrow. Nobody's going to like this. A narrow pathway just so people could coach. And already, like, people were like, oh, this is great. Thank you very much for changing this from last year, you know? So it just becomes about, like, drier, more boring things, like about, like, just, can people access the first aid station easily? Is there, you know, is my podium on the way to the bathroom because that's a bad idea? You know, little things like that. So now when you start to move into more people, but again, that's the sort of thing that actually makes it more enjoyable or a more relaxing day out for people, is that, you know, like you say, when people aren't on top of you, you know, it's because tournaments are stressful anyway, right? Stressful places, you know.
And I think that comes with the expectations now of your event specifically. It is Irish Open. People got to, I guess, the expectations were a little bit different when it was still Grapplapalooza, but as it slowly morphed into the Irish Open, now that there's the expectation of professionalism, it's the prime event, it's the event of Irish Jiu-Jitsu. So let's go back into that growth timeline and the transition from Grapplapalooza into the Irish Open. So you said Andy Ryan was running Irish Open or Dublin Open.
Andy and John Kavanagh. So originally that was the Irish Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Association. So they had run under the auspices of that. And the Irish Brazilian, myself and Liam were brought in then to run it as part of IBJJ. And then IBJJ disbanded for a variety of reasons we can't go into here. But as a result, then it was kind of followed. The tournament wasn't going to run. I contacted Andy Ryan. I said, "Look, me and Liam were kind of thinking maybe we'd do this next year." And he went, "Yeah, whatever." And I was like, "Okay, that's it." I was like, "Okay, well, look, we'll give it a go and we'll see how it works." And I think that was 2013, and we ran it in Cabra Parkside, 3 mats. We put a cool super fight on. It was Mike Fowler and Chris Bowe. In the middle of it, and again, it was much more, much higher demand than we expected. The venue was too small for what we were doing. We had no barriers. We had like tape, and that quickly got snapped like within about 5 seconds, and people were nearly crowded in on top of it. And immediately we looked at each other and went, "Whoa, okay, we've bitten off more than we could chew here." Because even with the year before had been successful, but not this successful. and we were like, okay, I think this is like 350 competitors. I mean, okay, we've bitten off more than we can chew. So next year we need to do a bigger venue. So we did 6 mats. We did the National Basketball Arena, something like 550 people. And we screwed it up that year, right? Because we, again, when you're talking about mistakes and things that you made, our scheduling was like all off completely. We were bringing people into the bullpen. We had people sitting in the bullpen for like 3 hours. It was insane.
I think I remember that one.
Yeah, I was like, oh, what have we done? But again, like, we resolved it after about like 2 hours. We knew we learned a long and important lesson that day, you know. But again, the event was well received. We had kids on at that stage as well. I think that was 2014. I could be getting some of the years wrong, by the way. They all merge into one sometimes. And then we went to City West as part of a bigger. Were you in the City West one?
No, I didn't go to City West.
Okay. City West is huge. It's actually where they built the temporary COVID hospital.
Yeah, I'm aware of it. Yes, City West is
yeah. So it's massive, and we had a section of that as part of a martial arts event. And again, when you're talking about lessons learned, the martial arts event about a week before turned around and went, oh, by the way, you know, it's a $5 in, and we went, huh? I was like, okay, but it's not a $5 in for our competitors. It's like, no, not for your competitors, but $5 in for everybody else. Part of an expo. And we went, oh, okay, well, just to let you know, we just put up a quick post, just to let you know, it's a €5 in for any spectators. And boom, the internet descended on us. It was like, we're not, and it was like, you scabby bastards. It was like, no, this isn't our money. None of this is going to us. We were just there as part of the event. So we had to try and figure out this method, like literally last minute, of allowing like parents to come in with juveniles and getting coaches in. We had to like organize and get badges printed off within like 3 days that coaches could wear. It was hectic. And again, we went, do you know what? Next year, let's not do it with anybody else. Let's have complete control over what we're doing. Because again, it was kind of being we were kind of hostage to fortune to the other guys. And the other guys were really good guys. This was what they were doing. We kind of assumed that we would have this like autonomy where we could let in our own guys, but they were like, no, we've got our security at the door. How are we going to do that? Like, you know, it's like, oh man. So yeah, huge, you know, a huge and painful mistake that cost us like so much stress over the last week. But eventually we figured it out and we ran a great event. Like the event was really good. And then after that, I think that was the year after that then was the first year of the National Indoor Arena, which is a beautiful venue. And actually, when the IBJJF come over, they were like, it's not the size, but obviously they're used to large arenas. It's actually the flexibility of it, and actually how it looks. Like it looks lovely. Like it's a good looking place. You know, we criticize, I guess, government facilities over here and sporting facilities, but they've done it absolutely perfectly with that arena. It's gorgeous. And after that, I would have to say that things have gone a lot smoother. I think part of being in the right venue, because another thing, Peter, is Ireland in particular does suffer from a lack of like suitable like event venues in terms of tiered seating and the stuff you'd expect, I suppose, from an international event, a major international event. But you know, literally having a place to sit down is a problem that you wouldn't think would be an issue, but you know, when it comes to hunting for arenas, you are down to about 3 in Dublin only.
Yeah.
And once you go any smaller than the indoor arena or smaller than the basketball arena, you're out of luck, you know.
Yeah.
So since then things have been a lot smoother, I have to say. And again, it's because of harsh lessons learned as opposed to anything else, I suppose. You know.
Exactly. Imagine being 800 people strong on the first event where you've no proper systems in place, so you don't want that. You want to start small and learn your way through. And it's funny because you see the lack of local awareness in the international tournaments that are coming in, and as you said, you know exactly what's going to work, what's not going to work just by looking at the name of the arena. And then you have, you know, even the likes of IBJJF coming in, the grappling industries, obviously they put in great tournaments, but you see the arena announcement, it's like, oh, that's bad news. That is bad news.
Yeah, it's not great. Yeah, that's going to be a bit of a mess. Yeah, and unfortunately, it's just logistical. And I mean, you can understand from an IBJJF perspective where they're probably coming in and anticipating a certain standard that they're getting elsewhere in Europe and the UK. Like they can walk into probably 5 arenas in London like tomorrow, and everyone. But when you go, oh no, don't go there. It's like,
Yeah.
you should have rang me in advance because I've looked at that place. You know?
Yeah, I remember the latest Dublin Open. It was Gormanstown, right? Or the Irish Open.
Yeah.
I can't remember. One of the IBJF events, and so people traveling now from abroad. A lot of people arriving. A lot of kind of high level black belts, and that was I think my first kind of season, let's say, as a black belt competing as well. And I've competed against a few guys in the different tournaments around Europe there, and they all expect again that the public transport and the arrangements can be in place like everywhere else in Europe, but the local specificity of public transport as well is very fascinating. And then I had a guy from my division call me or message me the day before. He goes, "Hey, I just checked out this place and Uber is like €100 one way." any idea how to get there? So yeah, then we had all these logistical problems as well.
And you should have put a bus on. That would have been like, anybody coming in, don't worry, throw you in for $5, I'll bring you down.
Yeah, so it's either one extreme or the other. So you can book accommodation in Dublin city centre and then having to travel, God knows where, or you book it somewhere around the venue and then you have nothing to do after the event. So.
Even with Blanchardstown, which is great, look, with the indoor, it's a super spot, but it is quite remote in terms of public transport. Like, you can bus it there and it's no problem. But even when you're organizing things like referees to try and for accommodation, like we had 12, was it 12 or 14? I think we had 14 rooms booked out in a hotel, and just for the refs, and we had to transport them back and forward. And it's costing us almost as much to get them from the hotel to the arena as it is for the hotel room itself, But that's Ireland. That's part of the challenge of putting anything on here. No public transport, no logistics, like I say, a very, very limited number of venues that can really support what you want to do. And I suppose we're just, for us, we're in this kind of like in an Irish perspective, we're in this kind of weird space where we're only now starting to see the level of sporting infrastructure that people are just that take as commonplace in Europe. So if you go to France, Germany, Poland, anywhere, you've got publicly funded facilities that can support an event like this. The whole idea is well, of course we have it, and we've got lots of GAA stadiums. We've got them left, right, and centre. But indoor sports, no, sorry. So it's but the Sport Ireland campus is beautiful. I can't complain one bit about it.
It's the first time I seen it, the first time I went there for an event, it could have been Irish Open. I can't remember exactly. I think it was Irish Open, and I was just amazed. I was like, oh my god, this looks proper. This is everything we needed. So now, if we talk about the kind of logistics and the components of putting together a tournament, because again, when people are looking at the whether it's a subscription fee or the like tournament fee, and they're looking, well, I'm going to compete, I'm paying whatever 50, 60, 70 euro, €100 like plus IBJF, and all I'm getting is a medal. Where is the rest of the money going? They must be making an absolute buck. So tell us, where is the rest of the money going? What goes into it?
It's swirling down a giant black hole known as getting referees in, for one. When we have a lot of domestic Irish trained and Irish situated black belt referees, the money will be going to other places. But for now, that's really the bulk of our expenses on staff. So most of the reason that we kind of respond to, I suppose, to kind of maybe start that sentence again. When you look at, like, again, the quality of the event over the years and the expectations of the event, initially it's fine to have the local purple belts and brown belts or even blue belts refereeing the matches. And as you increase the prestige of the event and you start to bring in by the event's reputation, suddenly you start to see a lot more names from, Russia, Poland, the UK, France. We literally, I think last year, we had 12 or 13 European countries represented, a couple of people coming in from the US to use it as a holiday as well. So there was a whole family came in from the United States. They had the kids competing in the kids event on the Saturday, and then the father competed in the event on the Sunday. So when you've got that, there's a level of expectation that it's not just going to be, the purple belt from down the road doing the refereeing. You need to have that high level. And so we take that kind of pain every year. And when I say it's pain, it is the most expensive part is getting those guys in, putting them up in the hotel, paying their fees, of which they're worth, So like a head referee last year was Marcelo Copa, who you'll see refereeing, European finals, for example. So that's the bulk of it. But the ancillary staff then that you don't see, I guess, are the people like the runners, the mat assistants, the scorekeepers. And again, last year over the course of the 2 days, you're talking about 70 of them. So and working in shifts, some of them competing, some of them coming on and off. Food for them, we were feeding every year. Now we're feeding like 150 people twice a day for 2 days, which isn't cheap, I can tell you. Medical cover, medical expenses for the ambulances. There's of course the mats, literally the bricks and mortar kind of stuff, like mats, fences, barriers. All those things are quite cheap in and of themselves, like barriers and tables, things like that. But what we found over the years is that they're actually what add up. So they're what actually end up, because you sit down, and when you start to cost your stuff out at the start of the day, it's very easy to write down a figure for mats, a figure for referees, a figure for hotels, a figure for staff, a figure for food, a figure for the medals, for the podium, all of those things. But it's actually when you go back then and you're starting to look at your balance sheet at the end, it's what you actually spent, the €50 here for when you needed pens, the couple of €100 because you forgot to get water on one of this. And those are the things that actually add up over time. Sort of those sundry expenses, and give you a real pain, and they can be the difference between red or black on your balance sheet at the end of the event. And other than that, the simple kind of stuff of getting stuff to and from a venue is extraordinarily expensive. You can rent a small van and do it over the course of 3 days or 2. Those things, they run up quite a bill. All of our medals are custom produced in China and then flown over here, and of course there's customs duty, VAT, and all those. And then that's before, like, you make a mistake and there's a misspelling on the ribbon or something like that, and you gotta factor that in, which has happened before.
That's gonna be the worst.
With a couple of thousand of them, it's like, oh God, look at that, when you sit down and individually you kind of cost it out. And I remember I had this discussion with a guy actually at the Europeans, and he was talking to me about the referees, because he was looking down on the mat when we were standing there in Lisbon this year, and he looked down. He says, I actually recognize 4 of the referees from the Irish Open. I didn't realize you had brought in those guys. And it's like, well, look, that's, if you want to do it right, you got to do it. There's only one way to do it, really. And it would be great to source those guys domestically. Obviously, it'd be great because it'd be a good deal cheaper. And it would also be great from an Irish perspective that we had that level of officiation here, that, you had those international level referees here. It would be great to have a few of them. Like, there are a couple already, but it'd be great to have a lot more. But until we do, we have to go to Europe and get them, go to Europe and the UK to get them. So guys in from Portugal and guys in from the UK in the main,
Yeah, and it's important, I guess, at least at this stage of the Irish Jiu-Jitsu development, to have those referees with the prestige and with the ability to handle the pressure as well, because you get, as a blue belt, as a purple belt, I've seen people getting abused from the stands and falling sometimes under pressure. I can't blame them. When you are a blue belt or a purple belt, doesn't even matter whether you're making a right or wrong decision, but you have let's say a reputable black belt shouting at you saying you're doing everything wrong,
Yeah.
your decision making, not even just for that much, you might just completely collapse, and in terms of you mentally and your confidence for the rest of the day, and now you're not sure of yourself and you're making more mistakes. So that's really important. So having that confidence in handling that pressure is really important.
Yeah. I mean, if refereeing, is the thankless job, of course, because when you do your job right, nobody notices you. But if you make one small mistake, then the eyes are all on you. Like I think as well, it helps to be not from the country that you're refereeing in, because of course you don't have to talk to the guy afterwards, and you don't have to see him next week, or if he slates you on the internet, you'll never see it, right? So, but I mean, initially we had, I don't know how many referees we've had quit who's just come up to us and just said, "Listen, it's not worth it. I'm just getting abused left, right, and center. That's not why I do this sport. I thought I was doing, it's nice to do a favor and all, but no, I'm not doing it anymore." I mean, but a lot of those guys, and a lot of guys you would be very surprised at as well, guys who are very experienced, who've actually come up to us and just gone, "It's not worth the abuse." Do you know what I mean? It's not worth it. So, I'm not going to do it anymore. So bringing even people in from abroad, it kind of eliminates that, because like I said, they're not getting abused by their countrymen, so it's they don't have to look at them next week, or see their names on the web again the week after. It's a thankless job, but I have to say, it's getting a little easier as the competitors and the coaches become more educated. So initially, a lot of the problems that a lot of times what you have is when you hear people roaring abuse, and you hear that kind of the kind of excited thing that people go, "No way, that kind of, he screwed you," all this kind of stuff. When you actually go and talk to the guy, you actually realize he doesn't really know the rules. So it's like, oh, okay. There's a reason he was shouting that he's cheated, because he thinks he's been cheated, because he doesn't actually know the rules, right? And then, like, and listen, I'm used to that as well, because I still work as a judge, like an MMA judge, and you still get those guys who are saying, "I don't know, you robbed me," and you sit down, you talk to them afterwards, and they go, "Oh, well, I didn't know that." All right, yeah, okay. I said, have you ever read the rule book? I was like, "Well, actually, no. I just get out there and fight. I don't care about the rules." And I guess that's the way it is. But like, if you look at like the experienced competitors, they know how to play the rule book as well. So it's even at the, without like having to worry about having arguments with referees, it's always a good idea to know the rules to make sure that you've got the best plan to win.
Yeah. There's one time that kind of changed my perspective a little bit on things as well. As I was in a tournament as a brown belt in Italy. We would go to Italy like quite often just to compete there as well. And I competed against a guy in the final, and I won, I think by an advantage or a point, like something minor, not a big thing. And I thought he should have gotten the points in the end. And I told it to him, and I was so surprised where he like, "Listen, happens." And then turned out he was the referee as well in the event. I didn't know he was the ref as well. But he took it so lightly in terms of like, "Listen, not a big deal." Like, he lost in the final, what I thought I won, and I thought potentially due to a referee mistake, and he was like, "Listen, not a big deal. You it happens."
It does, and it's an accepted course. I mean, especially when you've got human involvement, like, so even though the rules might be rigidly laid down in a rule book, you've got that flexibility of interpretation as to what's a guard pass, what's 3 points, and what's an advantage. Okay, did he hold it for long enough? Well, in my opinion, he didn't, so it's an advantage. But in the crowd's opinion, he held it for long enough, it's 3 points. But so when you've got that kind of thing, and if you've got experienced competitors who understand that that's the way it is, it swings and roundabouts, that there's interpretation, they'll stand up afterwards and they'll shrug their shoulders and go, "Look, I missed out. I thought I should have got those points, but obviously it was marginal. And in the margins, everybody wins and loses sometimes,
Yeah.
It doesn't tend to be more experienced competitors who give out like that,
Yeah. Yeah, but in the end, also you need to remember again why you're there and what you're there for. It's not just all about the medals. And speaking of what you're there for, a lot of the times. So now you guys started over the past couple of years. I think you started doing the prizes for absolute winners in the Irish Open, right? You sponsored a number of people for their trips to Europeans. One of our girls from our gym got sponsored, which was brilliant after winning the absolute in the blue belt. But a lot of people would still be very vocal about this and saying, there should be prize for everything. There should be cash money for everything. How hard is it, again, from bringing it back to the business side? It's like I can't sit there and think, do you know what? I think Barry there and Liam, they would want no business, no part of it at all. They probably just want to pocket all the money. They would not want to sponsor or give any cash money to competitors. It's like you probably would want if it was sustainable and feasible. So what's stopping that?
Well, it's quite simple, really. It is a bottom line thing. I mean, at the end of it all, I suppose, from a tournament perspective, you pay X amount, whatever it is. Let's say it's 80, 90 euro to go to BJJ, or 60 euro to go to the Irish Open, or whatever price you pay. And what you're paying for there is to go to an event with all of the trimmings that we spoke about, and to compete and win or lose. And that's what you're getting. And the idea of giving away prizes and doing things for the Europeans is our way of kind of helping out to the competitors to get abroad and to go and to do international tournaments as a kind of what would you say, kind of a sponsorship opportunity, because we are an Irish business. So we are an Irish jiu-jitsu business. So it's what we want to do, not what we're forced to do in any way. What we want to do is sponsor athletes to go abroad. And that's just a good thing that we can do from that perspective. Obviously, in every single thing that you do, someone wants you to do more, right? There's always somebody out there who wants you to do more. Well, and it's like, it's just par for the course. You know that that's what you're getting. In terms of the margins of giving away more or anything like that, it's just not financially possible. I mean, it's just a bit of a dream world to try and think that that's going to happen, because it just doesn't exist that way. And it's very easy, I suppose, to come to a tournament and go, let me see how many people are here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They've got 1,000 people. Well, I can multiply that by 50. Oh my God, they've got so much money, and they don't see what goes into it. I understand that from a very simplistic perspective. And I guess the more experienced you are as well, and the more experienced people are, they look at it and they go, oh guys, come on. I'm sure there's some backgrounds here that we don't know about. But in terms of like what we do, I mean, we sent, I think it was 13 this year. We've always had a prize. So we've always given away prizes. We've always given away money to people. So it used to be maybe just for brown and black belts. Well, I think initially purple and brown belts, because there was no black belts really. But 2 years ago, what we decided to do is we decided to change it away from that and to kind of give a more of a blanket thing. So for masters, masters male, and right the way through all of the divisions, as opposed to just one or two top divisions. Where we would like to change it, maybe it's just because it's absolute only. It's the best way of giving it away. But unfortunately, absolute tends to favor the heavier competitors. I would like to kind of come up with a better way of doing that. I'm not sure how it would be. Do you know what I mean? I can't really think of a good method of doing it. But like in terms of like what we do, like I mean, like I say, it's 13. It's thousands of euro every year that we give away. It was 13 last year. Year before, I think it was more. For some reason or other, I'll tell you why. Because this year we didn't have belt absolute, because we fell into line with the IBJJF, and again they've kind of explained some of their safety reasons behind that, which I think anybody can understand from a white belt perspective if you've seen a lot of white belt tournaments. So we didn't have that, so it was slightly more the year before, and again the year before that it was a couple of €100 here or there. I think it was. I think we may have given away European prizes the year before, but I think before that there was cash prizes. So it's thousands of euro every year. I mean, there's obviously a vocal minority out there who prefer to see more. But this is what we this is what we do and this is what we've chosen to do. And at the end of it all, I mean, what we want to do is support Irish Jiu-Jitsu. And the best way that we can actually do that is by giving out a high quality tournament, an international level tournament. Because that, when we do that, exactly, that's sustainable over the course of years. And I think we've done that. We've achieved that up to now. And I mean, if you look at it, that's for 1,200 people this year. And we were producing that for kids. Again, dropping the price is €25 for kids, which I think is probably the cheapest kids tournament you're going to get around. No late fees or anything like that. Because we want to grow that. And that's really where our contribution comes in, is that if there's 1,200 people getting that benefit of that tournament, and after that, anything that we kind of give away in terms of prizes is something that we just want to do.
Yeah, and it's again, it's an event, something that we had an episode with Dara a few, well, at this stage probably a couple of months ago, and speaking about how to make the local scene, how to enable the growth, I guess, of the jiu-jitsu, and is try to recreate almost the experiences as close to the top level international tournaments. And I think certainly Irish Open is very, very close to that feel of the big IBJJF tournament.
What was he talking about? Just kind of that the events should be kind of like that?
Well, the whole experience and the professionalism, the scale of the event and the feel of it being close to something where you could, where Irish people could achieve something, and get the recognition. So, if you have no similar experiences or close to that, you might get just overwhelmed. You come into Europeans, there's like 3,000 people, you've no idea what's going on, you've never been called properly to the bullpen, you're nervous, your legs are shaking, etc. Whereas now, at least as I see it, where Irish Open is now, it's a very, very close resemblance of that scale of event.
Yeah. I'd agree with Darren on that point. That's one of the things as well, I suppose, from an organizer perspective, is that look, we're in line with the IBJJF, and I know other tournaments are in line with other organizations, and that's fine. But the reason we've kind of allowed the IBJJF in so many ways is because they're the number one. They've set and they've set all of the standards that you see. So it's not an unrealistic thing to say, Peter, that without the IBJJF, you and I might not have our academies, because of the way that they've grown the sport. Now I know that they've pissed a lot of people off along the way, and that other people, and I'm sure they've made a dozen mistakes, in over the years that have. Maybe perhaps not been in line with what we all think it should have been, but for me at least, I mean, from my perspective where I'm sitting, I can look now, and every June, not this June, I can look at a World Championships, and I look at that and I go, whoever wins that division is the World Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu champion. There's no doubt about that. There's no, there's another world champion down the road or anything like that. And look, if you look at the scale of the events that they're putting on, Europeans this year was brilliant again. It was an incredible event. I hadn't been in actually in quite a few years, so it was great to go and watch it. Great to even just sit down and watch for the weekend. And all of those things have grown out of the IBJJF's kind of pig-headedness in many respects, if you know what I mean. They stuck to their guns. They upset a lot of people, but they had a vision for what they wanted to do with the sport. And like, if you look at what we I think, again, I don't think it's not a huge leap to say that the success of our academies is thanks to them, even if we would still change a lot of things that they do,
Yeah, but it's consistent. Again, talking about consistency, right? It's everybody knows what to expect,
and it's not. I know, like, I think actually I was speaking with Dara a couple of years ago. I think maybe it was the last event, the first IBJJF event that we had here. And we were talking about, like, that a lot of older guys' experience with IBJJF was just getting, like, creanched, like getting gringoed at the Europeans in like 2010, like that was their experience. It was like, I fought a big Gracie Bag guy and I lost by decision. Like, but for my experience with the IBJJF has been one that's been extremely professional, a very professional sports management company, I suppose, sports events company, and so in one sense, but also I'll give you a quick story. At the Ireland National, which was the first one that we had done with the IBJJF last May. I went to the referees course on the Friday night, and I did the refs course, and I'd helped set up the entire event and spoken to the event coordinators all day. And just quickly as I was leaving, it was about 10 o'clock at night, I was like, oh, I said, I just touched the guy on the shoulder. I said, I'm competing tomorrow. Can I go down and check my weight? And he went, oh, no, you get no advantage for being here. And I went, okay, right, okay, that's a test passed, you know. So even like when you're organizing the event, even when you're competing at Masters 2, you know, you're not getting a Masters 3 actually. You know, you're not getting any favors. They're very professional, very sportsmanlike, and again, it's and that's something I suppose that we would like to reflect as well when it comes to the Irish Open. Though it's not an IBJJF tournament, that we would like to keep it in line with that standard and that level of professionalism.
Yeah. So my next question then, in relation to the IBJJF's entrance into the Irish scene. Okay, so one could argue that our local scene was already quite saturated with tournaments, and now you have two major tournaments from the major organization coming in, right? So they have Dublin Open in December, and then around May time, Irish Nationals. Okay, so what was your kind of experience with that? Because you, in a way, you had to make way for the Irish Nationals. Well, you were involved with them, obviously. You worked with them together, and obviously you found some form of a compromise there. But how was that experience for you? Because you, as I said, you were one of the major players. As I said, you as an Irish BJJ Championships organization, in growing it to the point where IBJJF said, "Hey, we might want to go there because it's now you know, a big scene." Yeah. So did you take it as something positive, as a something kind of almost like a recognition, or was it like a challenge, like what are we going to do with our own tournament now?
No, actually it's the other way around. So they approached us as opposed to anything else, and they'd run the Dublin Open at this stage, Dublin International, in December. And Enrique, who's involved with us as well, Enrique Cerida, and he came and said, look, they want to do a second one. They want to do a national, because in every city, if you look, in every country that they go in, they've got two tournaments. So they, for example, have the Munich International Open, and they'll have the German National.
What's the difference other than the name?
So what they try to do is, the city ones are just called London International, or I don't know what other ones they have. Manchester? Did they have Manchester?
Munich.
Yeah. So you have Munich, or they'll have they'll have, for example, from a Polish perspective, they've got the Warsaw International and the Poznan International, but they'll have the Polish National. And the Polish National is meant to be your national event, and then there's this city event, which is just a tournament. Does that make sense?
Well, I still don't understand the difference in practice. Like, what does it mean in terms of sign-ups?
So in practice, what they would like to see, and again, this is a way off in most countries that they're dealing with, but it does exist in Italy. So in Italy, if you want to sign up to the IBJJF, you sign up to the Italian Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Federation. Right? And as a result, then you're now an Italian member of the international organization. To scale it back like a number of years ago, when I joined my Taekwondo club, the first day when I walked in, I signed a form and I paid 25 quid. And I went, what's that for? And they went, it's for the International Federation. And it went off, and I didn't know what the hell it was for, right? But you just signed up to the International Federation because that's the way it is with judo, that's the way it is with karate, that's the way it is with most international sports on that scale, if you understand what I mean. So, for example, if you play football tomorrow, you're a de facto member of FIFA. Right, even though you're only playing for, Wellmount, or whatever it is,
or because it funnels into it.
Yeah, sooner or later, if you follow the chain down, you're at the lowest rung of the ladder in the FIFA ladder. And the idea of that is that you've got a unified sport that's operating under unified rules with certain standards that filter down through the organization. And there might be some local differences, but you know what you're getting when when you walk onto a football pitch to play 90 minutes, you're not going to be told, oh, by the way, today you can tackle from behind. Right? It's like, oh, okay, right. Shit, wasn't prepared for that. Oh yeah, and the goalkeeper can't pick up the ball today, and the left fullback, well, he can do what he wants. What level are you at? Okay, so that's you've got a game and a sport that's unified, and that's what the IBJJF are going for. That's what they're going for worldwide. So where it's complete or kind of complete is, for example, in which case they have a national championships, which is the Italian nationals. So that whole country, and the idea is that whoever wins the Italian nationals is the Italian champion. And then you might have the Milan International Open, which are just a winner of a tournament. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay.
More in keeping. Okay. Right. All right.
Okay.
So we're on the right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's say the national would resemble more the Irish Open kind of.
Exactly. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
So we stepped aside at that stage. They were interested, and we said, "Look, yeah, let's go for it." To be honest, at the time, we were considering kind of not stepping away and certainly stepping back, because we thought we're busy guys. We both got young families, and it's a lot of stress to try and do the tournaments, and a lot of hassle. So we were considering actually stepping away completely. And the IBJJF came along at just the right time. We said, "Look, okay, let's do it that way," you know. And then when we actually got into it and we worked with the IBJJF, we actually got a lot of pressure from others then to kind of, look, you need to run the Irish Open as well. Let's do it. Keep it going. And people were contacting us left, right, and centre, going, come on, keep it going, keep this up. And this was before we'd actually run the nationals. So we said, look, maybe, responded to a bit of peer pressure. Okay, maybe we'll have a think about it. And what happened was we just took on a couple of other people who we said, look, will you guys help us out with it? And Nike stepped in as well, and he's been a great help as well for us. And so the result was then is that we kind of started to see the Irish Open in a little bit of a different way. So, for example, the Irish Open in IBJJF tournaments, no white belt kids for one thing. So you kind of, I don't know if you know that. You can't. There's no white belt kids. It's a no white belt kids. Like little things like there's like obviously the price is different. You know, I mean, there's cost involved in both tournaments. Membership is another one. So if you're not an IBJJF member now, you can't, go to an IBJJF tournament. So it's not as open, and it's not as what would you say, kind of like it's not going to like attract like the same level of people, sort of I would say at the lower level. And finally, I suppose the other thing that kind of struck us was in terms of the international competitors coming in, we were starting to see people coming in from, as I said, Poland, Bulgaria, Spain. We're starting to see people come in, but in dribs and drabs. And what we realized very quickly is that even though we were now like 1,000 people come to the tournament every year, there was never going to be a huge international involvement. Because why? Because people aren't going to come, black belts aren't going to come, for example. So lower level people, purple belts, blue belts, they'll come over for the experience and to enjoy the tournaments, to see Dublin. Black belts and brown belts aren't going to come over because they don't want to come here to waste time competing in a tournament that isn't going to get them points to go to the Europeans or points to go to the Worlds. And that's where we're headed, like in terms of an international sport, when we talk about international level competitors. So if you compare, even though there was 1,200 people, and I think there was 800 people at the Ireland National and like 1,200 people at the Irish Open, if you compare the brown and black belt divisions, in each one, there's no contest whatsoever. There's a few black belt divisions versus the amount of international competitors that Irish black belts can now go and compete against in the Ireland National. And no matter how big the Irish Open gets, no matter how great we are, no matter what medal we put out there, we are never going to attract that level of competitor. So there's never going to be, the likes of what was coming in for the Ireland National or the Dublin International Open. Like Claudio Duval isn't coming to the Irish Open, no matter what way we entice her here. So that level of competitor can only be pulled in by the IBJJF. So if we want to be a realistic pin in the map for top black belts and for top brown belts and for competitors who are looking to try and qualify for majors, get really good experience, and if we want our brown and black belts to be able to compete against those guys here in Dublin, it won't be at the Irish Open most of the time. It's gonna have to be the IBJJF, and that's why they're here. and that's why we kind of said we were very, very happy to step aside in May, like, and allow them to do that, because it's a no-brainer in terms of the development of the sport here.
Yeah, and it's very interesting, the whole dynamics. As I said, your own event, as it hasn't suffered a bit because it was the biggest tournament ever, right?
Yeah.
In your books.
Well, a rising tide floats all boats. Like, I mean, that is the way it is. I mean, and if you're coming to like into Dublin, like I say, if you see Claudia Duval competing in December or November last year, or you see, I don't know, whoever's coming next year, I don't know, maybe Jackson Souza is going to, but who was here in May? My memory's gone to pot. But last May we had a couple of like big names coming in from the US and coming in from Europe. And if you see those guys looking on in May, you know, that's exciting. That's great. So the kids are going to, you know, kids who are coming along, or teenagers, the likes of my son who's 15 years of age, is coming along. He's standing at the barrier. He was actually working the event last year, and he's seeing these black belts coming in from Brazil and coming in from, you know, Europe and Sweden, and he's going, oh, wow. That makes him want to train more and makes him want to be on that stage. So that brings him to the Irish Open, and it brings him to all the other tournaments around the country as well, you know, because he's got a target there. He's got something that he wants to do and wants to strive towards.
Yeah. In the beginning, to be honest, on a personal level, I didn't really get the value of the tournaments. For me, I wasn't actually buying into the value of them. I said, well, I don't know, you know, do you have so many of these different? And I was always, as I said, always a fan of yours. I thought we need that kind of domestic tournament. It's good enough. Kind of homegrown tournament, fantastic. But the more I speak to people, the more I understand different perspectives, and the more I open my mind as well to the actual value. And so the fact that you can compete against the top level guys, even for me personally, now that I got my black belt, it's like now I don't even need to travel anywhere to find the best guys.
Oh well, that's it. Like, I mean, if you're walking out onto the mat like next, well, hopefully in November, but who knows? Like, I mean, but. If you're walking out like to the next time of the IBJJF over, and like, you know, it could be Finfu, you know, it could be I don't know who else, you know, I mean, like, it could be anybody. You could literally be walking out in front, and geez, I don't know, you know, Mikey Musumeci might be training for the Europeans and need to come over and do a tournament, or whoever it is, you know, and that could be.
December is a good time when people try still to get some points, you know, for.
Yeah, that's why the International Open. That's why it's in a great spot there, you know. Yeah, and it's unfortunately the Irish Open or the Ireland National last year was just a little too close to the Worlds. Yeah, and if we had it maybe a couple of weeks before, potentially, you know, there could have been a little more of an international feel to it. But you know, we are at the, unfortunately, as I said before, we're at the behest of venues as well, and all of that logistical nonsense that we have to go along with, you know. No, but I have to say, I was where you were probably 2 years ago in terms of the IBJJF and its value to like different countries that they're coming into. And it's actually taken me, it just took to get inside the organization a little bit and to speak to people in terms of what they're trying to do. And when you actually speak to the guys within the IBJJF in terms of their vision, in terms of what they want out of the sport and their vision for the sport, you actually start to understand a lot of the decisions they make, even if you still disagree with them.
Yeah, but there's some consistency and logic.
Yeah, and they're in the position, I suppose, the unfortunate position of having to make decisions about things like reaping or, you know, 50-50 guard or lapel guard or whatever it is. They have to make a decision on ball down on one side or the other. They can't leave it in that wishy-washy zone. And I think in terms of, like, that's where a lot of people, most people have their issues, right, is with that. Kind of their decisions or the decisions they feel they haven't made, you know?
Yeah, but as far as the presence is concerned, the way I kind of thought of it over the last months is, and just a realization, especially after seeing how all these events got a piece of their success within the same calendar year. Because in the beginning, my thoughts is, I looked at it as a zero-sum game. Somebody's winning, somebody else is losing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if you increase the size of the pie overall, everybody wins. So it is really not a zero-sum game. It's
and I think especially for a growth sport like us, for a small sport like us, I mean, I say this all the time about academies. You've got two choices. You can compete for there's one guy, let's say there's one guy in Dublin who wants to train tonight. You can compete for that guy, or you and me, we can work together and we can get 10 more guys, 5 each, right?
Yeah,
we can
100%.
generate an interest in the sport that we all do well. Or we can bitch and moan about each other and try and, compete for the small pool that's out there.
For the
Instead,
same,
we
yeah,
should
for
increase
sure.
the size of the pool, right?
Yeah, so when you look at the jiu-jitsu market, it's not the people that are training, it's the infinity of people who are not training that's what you are looking to get. It's you're competing against the commercial gyms where people are bored to death and they can't do anything, and you're not competing against each other academies from that perspective.
Exactly,
And
you're competing against the perception, I think, as well, in terms of like there'll always be professional events, that's people are saying, but what about leg locks? And what about, I know you're a leg lock fan, right? You're a bit of a leg lock fan yourself. Like, but people think about, but what about heel hooks and what about this? There'll always be that opportunity to compete in those tournaments. But what the IBJJ have done is they've given you this safe avenue, a relatively safe avenue to compete in jiu-jitsu, especially at a white belt level, where you're being relatively protected in terms of what your opponent is able to do to you, to a relative degree. Obviously it's still a combat sport, but like if you look at that, like in terms of accessibility and parents bringing their kid down to watch, like if he goes and he wants to go on YouTube or whatever it is and look up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, what's he going to see? He's going to see the yellow and blue mats. He's going to see the referee in the suit. He's going to see the points being given. He's going to see these guys going out shaking hands, and he's going to go, oh, okay, this looks like something I want to get my kid into. Versus maybe 5 or 6 years ago, or maybe a little longer, when he maybe Googled jiu-jitsu, what he might have seen is MMA, and that appeals to some people, but most people, they're going to go, whoa, they're going to run a mile from that, right? It's not, and it doesn't feel very accessible. Or imagine being a girl right now, Googling, I want to learn some self-defense, and the first thing you see is some tattooed dude, swinging out of another guy's heel and the other guy screaming. Your first ever match you watch is Craig Jones against Vinny Magalhaes, and you're going, oh, that's it? No, not for me.
And I believe it's a good structure, and kind of one of the arguments I've made kind of briefly previously through this platform. I kind of posted on social media the feel of what people think, and I'm kind of planning to explore this avenue further. This structure that we have with IBJJ, because a lot of people complain about the fact that IBJJF is not a formal federation. It's like it is a federation by name, but it's not a true federation. And my argument is it's a good thing, because they have what's called skin in the game. They have actually, the fact that they are financially relying on this whole enterprise makes them make certain decisions. Mm-hmm. And they will be ultimately accountable for those decisions. And you may agree or disagree with that, but with them not being a true federation, now you're not forced to play that game. You can completely go offside and do pro events and do these events. You just have complete freedom. You're not forced to do anything. Whereas if there was let's say a true federation, I'm not sure we would have that flexibility.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to look at as well is that the biggest sport in the world is soccer, football, and the biggest true federation in the world is FIFA. And are you going to tell me that they make every decision for the game, for the good of football? Come on, there's corruption, and there's that level of that in every sport in the world. And if you think people aren't getting rich off your favorite sport just because it's a true federation, man, I'll just point you to Sepp Blatter, and we'll say no more after that.
Yeah, and
John Delaney on a local level, right?
Another argument in that respect that I'm generally making when people talk about non-profit organizations is like, non-profit doesn't mean that individuals within the organization don't profit personally. It's the bottom line of the organization. Yeah, there's a wage. You could put yourself like million wages and technically still be non-profit because the company makes a loss even or whatever. But you as an individual, you can work that system pretty well. So
ultimately, when people talk about non-profit and like things being not for profit or anything like that, there's probably good intentions behind things, but ultimately then if I'm let's say I'm doing something and it's not for profit, right? It's non-profit, and I'm left with a profit. Well, now I'm some sort of like king. I can distribute the money as I see fit. There's no, I could give it to my buddy. I could give it to the guy who I think is most deserving. That's not fair either, is it? You know, so, okay, I don't think there's anything wrong with running a good business, a good, well-structured event that when you pay money for it, you get your value for money, and therein the transaction ends, right? If I'm going now next week to an IBJJF tournament, or whether I'm going to Grappling Industries or anything like that, I pay my money, I compete, and I walk out at the end of the day, and that's it. And I don't have to know where that money's going. I just have my transaction, you know, and I'm happy with that, you know.
But as you said before, it's the reward in a way for people is the existence of that event. The very existence of that event is the reward. So would you now, let's say you're the most avid critic of an IBJJF as an organization, would you want IBJJFs to vanish? You probably wouldn't.
No.
Exactly. What would be in the place of it? So, if it's not dictated by the business logic, again, if you don't make your event successful, you are risking you're risking just to vanish altogether. And now all those people that complained about your fees, tournament fees, or the quality of your medals, saying, you know, this is shambles, this shouldn't exist. Now they say, oh, I would pay twice that to get to compete.
I think one of the important things I think that comes out of as well is when you look at that kind of anti-IBJJF. I mean, we're talking about the IBJJF, but it could be any large tournament or any large organization. When you talk about that anti kind of thing, anything I think that grows in opposition to something, just to be in opposition to it, tends to not last very long anyway. So it doesn't have, like, we were talking at the start about a why, right? So you need your why. Why are you doing this? And if you're doing it just to say screw the IBJJF, well, then it's probably not a very good why, right? It's probably not a very good place to come from. Whereas if you're thinking, well, I think I can do better than them. I think that I can offer more in terms of what we do, and I think I can improve that. I would say, I would bet you, like dollars to donuts, as they say, if you come back to that organization 5 years, they'll look very much like the IBJJF, because they'll have to go through that rigmarole of making those decisions, come up against the same roadblocks that those guys have come up with against over and over and over again. And listen, sometimes I'm not a fan of the IBJJF. Sometimes I look at it and I go, oh, come on, you know, that's not the correct decision, or that's not. But in terms of what they're doing, I mean, look, what could they do better? I think they could do drug testing better, for example, at the World and at the Europeans and at the majors. I think that could be something. Although there are massive legal challenges from that, having been somewhat educated in that in the past, I could tell you that there's huge legal hurdles around even suspending someone, like, you know, from it's a massively expensive program. But I still think they could do better at the Worlds in particular. There are other things like around the rules that I would like to see maybe a little bit more clear. But again, I don't have to make those decisions, so it's very easy for me to sit back here and go, oh, you should do better. Well, how? Well, I don't know. You guys come up with it.
It's your job, yeah. I'd be on the same page. I would be on the same page. As I said, a lot of the times I would be critical of IBJJF, but that being said, I'm actually admiring what they have created, and I think they deserve where they are, because that doesn't come about, you know, like this. It's a lot of years.
20 years work, and the rest, yeah.
It's being the pioneers, taking those risks. You imagine how many losses they have made when they, you know, first moved to the US. And
if they wanted to make money now, they would have scrapped the membership and they could have open registration, right? That's if that was their real goal. And people say, but the membership is €35 a year and you have to pay it. I would imagine that the membership costs them more money a year than it does make them. And the reason being that there's so many more people would be in their competitive net if they didn't have to sign up for the year. But the membership is, for me, again, like, I mean, you can argue the toss in it, whether it's worth the money or not, 25 quid a year. But the membership, in terms of to the likes of governments, again, this is something I've been kind of down the road with a little bit in the past as well. In terms of, like, if you want to bring a sport to like a government organization, you say, okay, we've got 5,000 people training jiu-jitsu in Ireland. They go, where are they? I said, well, I just know they're here. And I said, okay, show me the registration forms, show me their cards, show me what you're doing, show me your athlete lists. And you go, well, I don't have one because it's all in my head, you know. But my buddy down the road tells me he's got 200 students, so I guess I got to. Unless you get them signed on the dotted line, they're not your athlete, you know, and they're not a part of your sport. So even by doing that, which I know was caused a lot of people a lot of heartbreak and actually cost the Ireland national a lot of competitors, because it was the first year that white, blue, and was it purple? No, white, blue, purple, brown, and black needed it already, right? Yeah. So it was the first year that white and blue needed and kids needed an IBJJF ID. So as a result, I think kids from orange up had it before, but this was like first year that grey and yellow I think needed. I could be wrong on that with the kids, but definitely white and blue belt. So they cost themselves money that year. And probably cost themselves like money into this year as well in terms of the participation. But again, they know that they need to do that to organize the sport, right?
The very fact that they're a commercial organization, they'll continue making mistakes, and things will cost them. And if they were not commercial, they probably wouldn't even care about those mistakes because, do you know what I mean? Like, you know, there's certain government support. They're not in charge of their own money. You know, the decision making tends to be a bit different. Whereas now, if let's say, again, without having any insights, maybe, you know, down the line in 2 years' time, they realize this whole membership thing was a mistake because they're suffering the consequences of it. That's how they realized.
Yeah. But I think,
it could be otherwise. I don't know.
If they want to build what they want to build, which I think is like a truly international organization, like with like governing bodies in all of the countries, I think this is the way they're going to have to do it. The big question now is, I suppose, is like COVID has just put such a dent in everybody. I mean, nobody knows what's going to happen next. But no, I don't know. Look, broadly speaking, like I say, out of the same kind of what would you call it? Like little kind of issues with the IBJJF that most people have, especially in terms of pricing and things like that. That you know, but when you see what goes in, you kind of go, yeah, I understand where the money goes. But equally, you know, as I said, like I think, you know, the popularity of the sport, while there might be things that are more popular now on Instagram or anything like that, you know, there's thousands of people going to a European Championships every year. There's, you know, a true world champion every year in every division, in every weight division. You know, and there's countless events going across the globe, all under the same rule set, all with the athletes, you know, looking the same, and you know, in terms of like how it looks. There's kids flocking to academies. Like we've a huge kids program in our academy, massive. Missing them all terribly at the moment, you know. So trying to get them back in July, and we've never like. I think we owe an awful lot of that to the IBJJF, perhaps without knowing it, you know. That'd be just my opinion on it, I suppose, you know.
Yeah, I think let's not go into the whole conversation about that. I think that's worthy over a kind of whole separate episode and conversation. I'm hoping to get IBJJF onto this podcast as well and get more insights into their operations. But for our purposes, I guess to give a light on your story and your development, that's been amazing, Barry. So thanks very much for joining the podcast, and we'll wrap this up on this. So
that's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having me, Peter.